one of the most fascinating elements of invisible disabilities, such as learning and reading disabilities, right, is remembering that our brains are wired to talk, brains are wired to process language, but our brains are not naturally wired to read, right? And to read actually takes visual possibilities, capabilities, it takes memory, it takes cognitive processing, it takes sound for most of us, right? And so our brain is also rewired and reshaped by the process of learning to read. But because it's so complicated, there are so many things that can go wrong. And so, as Paula mentioned, we're talking about dyslexia. And dyslexia is a particular kind of reading disability, but really there are many, many kinds of reading disabilities because of how complicated it is to learn to read. Well, we can learn a lot about the brain and how we figure things out by thinking about what it means to read and what it means to struggle to read. And then the third point might also, that as a community college instructor, one of my frustrations actually is that it's not unusual for people, especially with other types of reading disabilities. Dyslexia is actually the most common of the kinds of reading problems that are diagnosed in small children. But for all the other processes that could be interfered with, many adults don't know that they have a reading disability, and it's likely when they decide to come to college, they come to a community college, and as Paula will probably talk about, there are lots of legal and complicated and policy issues involved with getting accommodations, but if you don't have a diagnosis and you think everybody reads just like you do, it's really hard to get you what you need.
Oh, and here's the last one that you have.
Oh, yes. There's a wonderful book, it's called Bruce and the Squid. And if you're interested in reading something about the magic of reading, this is a great, fascinating book. But Marianne Wolf talks a lot about how we can learn a lot from the human brain, and about what about a brain that's different, right? And most people's brains, 80% of people's brains, process print like this. What can we learn about how the human mind works by looking at the brains that work differently? And so she uses the metaphor of a squid that can't swim very fast, but still manages to stay alive. And I think this is a very useful metaphor. What can we learn about our abilities to overcome things by looking at reading difficulties?
Okay, so we're going to give you an approximation. Now, granted, any of these simulations that you're going to be experiencing today, and anything that we're putting up on the screen or showing you from the internet, these are just merely a snapshot of what it can appear for some people. I could have 10 people with a dyslexia